She doesn't fall for your words. She falls for what your silence makes her feel inside. Most men think women like charm, attention, or showing off their strength. They think winning someone over starts with words that are carefully picked, full of emotion, and said at the right time. But what really takes control of a woman's feelings is not what you say. It's what your lack of words makes her feel. Your silence is not nothing. It's a mirror. And what that mirror shows is her own need to be guided. When you speak, she listens to you. But when you're silent, she listens to herself. And that is much more powerful. Because her mind starts to fill with questions she can't quiet. What does his quietness mean? Why doesn't he chase me? Why does he look like he already knows everything? And that quiet worry becomes the beginning of her being hooked on you. You see, attraction doesn't start with happiness. It starts with disturbance, a small imbalance, a crack in what she was sure about. That's when her deeper mind starts to circle, trying to figure out the puzzle that you've become. What if being hooked doesn't start with liking someone, but with confusion? That's the question no one dares to ask because we've been taught to believe that love grows from connection, talking, and understanding. But women don't fall for what they understand. They fall for what they cannot explain. Confusion is not messiness. It's the first beat of curiosity. Curiosity is not interest. It's the beginning of emotional need. And need, when it takes hold, no longer asks for reasons. It follows gravity. The truth is harsh. She doesn't want clarity. She wants tension. She doesn't want to understand you. She wants to feel you. The difference is the huge gap between comfort and addiction. Every woman's mind carries a hidden opposite. She wants safety, but she's pulled toward danger. She wants gentleness, but she melts before authority. She wants connection, but she craves losing control. The feminine spirit does not find peace in balance. It finds meaning in opposites. When you are calm, she feels alive. When you pull away, she follows. When you stay unmoved, she begins to move around you. Your silence isn't passive. It's like gravity. It bends her emotions toward you slowly, invisibly, and she can't resist. Think of it this way. Every man who tries to win her through attention is swimming at the surface. But the man who stays silent, who refuses to fill every pause, he opens a hole in her mind. And nature hates a hole. So her mind rushes in to fill it with imagination, with fantasy, with stories she writes about you. And every story she creates ties her deeper to your image. She becomes addicted to her own idea of you. And you, if you understand this silent rule, become the builder of her obsession. There's a reason the greatest kings, thinkers, and conquerors never spoke more than they needed to. Because true authority doesn't announce itself. It radiates. The same applies to attraction. The man who needs to explain himself loses power. The man who doesn't becomes the question she can't stop asking. In your silence, you are not ignoring her. You are teaching her to feel the heaviness of you being gone. You are teaching her nervous system to look for balance through you. You become the still point in her chaos, the center of emotional order she unconsciously obeys. And yet here lies the opposite. If you try to be silent, it won't work. Because forced silence is insecurity dressed up as control. Real silence, the one that hypnotizes, comes from stillness. From knowing that nothing you say could increase your worth, and nothing she does could lower it. Women don't chase words. They chase energy. And energy without movement. That is the rarest form of power. So the question becomes, can you stand in silence without shrinking? Can you let her discomfort grow without needing to comfort it? Can you resist the urge to fill the hole and instead become the whole? Because that hole is where her desire is born. In this teaching, you'll see the invisible rule that makes women crave what they can't explain, and the silent mechanics that turn fascination into addiction. You'll learn why your stillness triggers her imagination, why mystery enslaves her emotions more than affection ever could, and why she returns to the one man who never chases her. Not because he dominates her, but because his silence exposes her own hunger. This is not a lesson in manipulation. It's an examination of desire. The human mind doesn't bond through pleasure. It bonds through contrast, confusion, and the tension of the unknown. When you master these forces, you no longer chase love. Love begins to orbit you. In the end, you'll understand what most men never will. That attraction is not about what you give. It's about what you hold back. And silence, when charged with presence, is the most powerful form of holding back. In the final part of this journey, you'll uncover the binding law. The silent loop that creates addiction, the hidden rhythm through which her emotions learn to return to you, even when she swears she's done. But before you reach that, you must go down layer by layer. First, you'll see how silence disturbs the female mind. Then, how that disturbance becomes curiosity. How curiosity turns into tension, and how tension once not relieved hardens into obsession. This is not a story about words. It's a study of absence, because absence when it has meaning becomes presence, and presence when it has gravity becomes law. You don't need to chase her. You don't need to prove anything. You only need to become the silence that reflects her hunger back to her. That's the beginning of everything. The moment she stops hearing you and starts feeling you. Part 1: The Hidden Trigger. Why silence disturbs the female mind. When you stop explaining, she starts imagining. Every man who's ever lost control in a relationship has made the same mistake. He tried to clarify. He tried to explain what he meant, what he felt, what he wanted. He believed that talking would restore harmony. But the truth is, explanation destroys mystery. And mystery is the oxygen of female desire. A woman's mind does not grow on what is clear. It grows on what is unknown. Her attraction is not to information, it's to interpretation. And the less you give her to interpret, the more she invests in building meaning around you. Your silence activates the blind spot in her psychology, the area where logic dissolves and imagination takes command. This is where obsession is born. Because when she doesn't have the facts, she becomes addicted to finding them. She starts wondering. She starts replaying your tone, your gestures, your pauses. She analyzes your absence, your last message, your eyes when you said nothing at all. She replays it in her mind 100 different ways. And in every replay, you become something more than a man. You become a mystery. And no woman ever forgets the man she cannot solve. Most men fear silence because they think it means disconnection. But silence when held with presence is not absence. It's depth. It's an atmosphere that invites her subconscious to come alive. You become a canvas and her emotions become the paint. She starts filling the blank space you left behind with color, her fears, her hopes, her fantasies. And slowly she stops seeing you and starts seeing the version of you her mind invented. That version, the imagined one, is stronger, darker, and more magnetic than anything you could ever say. You've heard the phrase, women overthink. But overthinking is not a flaw. It's a mechanism. When she feels something but can't define it, her brain loops. It searches for closure. It tries to make sense of the unease. And the more she fails to define it, the more her emotions anchor around the source of confusion, you. That is the hidden trigger. You're not feeding her logic. You're feeding her imagination. And imagination is far more addictive than clarity. Silence disturbs her not because it's cold, but because it forces her to meet herself. It strips away the noise, the validation, the small talk until only her own inner chaos remains. And in that silence, she projects it onto you. You become the stage for her internal drama. One moment, she's angry, the next she's intrigued, then she feels vulnerable, then curious again. Each shift in her emotion ties her deeper to the image of you because her mind associates you with the sensation of feeling alive. That's why she keeps coming back. Not for who you are, but for who she becomes around you. Your silence gives her a mirror that no other man offers, one that reflects her emotions, not your intentions. When she says, "You're hard to read," she's confessing fascination. When she says, "I can't tell what you're thinking," she's admitting submission. Because what the female mind truly fears and secretly craves is uncertainty. It's the emotional equivalent of standing at the edge of a cliff, fear and excitement fused into one pulse. Every look you hold back, every pause you extend, every unanswered message you let breathe, it amplifies that tension. And tension is the invisible thread that keeps her tied to you long after the conversation ends. You don't need to create attraction through movement. You create it through stillness. Because when everything about you slows down, her mind speeds up. She becomes restless in your calm, addicted to your composure. Your silence becomes the riddle she burns to solve. Imagine this. She's lying in bed. The room is dark. Her phone is silent, just like you. She tells herself she doesn't care, but her mind doesn't believe her. It replays every word, every pause, every glance. It begins to whisper. Why isn't he reaching out? What does that mean? Did I lose him? Or is he testing me? And with every question, her attachment deepens. What you're witnessing is not love. It's psychological momentum, a loop between confusion and craving. And once it starts, it feeds itself. Because the more uncertain she feels, the more she needs to restore balance. But she can't because you've removed the anchor. Your silence becomes both her punishment and her pleasure. It gives her something to chase, something to decode. You become the unspoken story running in the background of her mind. This is why silence works only when it has gravity. If your silence comes from insecurity, she feels absence. But if it comes from composure, she feels power. She feels your frame. She senses that you are grounded, unshaken, self-contained. And that triggers a primal polarity, the instinct to orbit around strength. You are no longer a participant in her emotional storm. You are the eye of it. Silence is not about holding back attention. It's about holding back reaction. Most men crumble when a woman tests them. They rush to defend, to explain, to fix. But the moment you explain, you collapse the mystery. You remove her need to imagine. And the spell breaks. Remember this. The female mind doesn't seek truth. It seeks meaning. Truth satisfies the mind. Meaning satisfies the soul. And when you stop providing explanations, you force her to find meaning on her own. She begins to build stories around your silence. Stories where you are the central figure. She'll tell herself you're confident. She'll tell herself you're disciplined. She'll tell herself you're desired by others. And the irony is she creates the version of you she can't resist. That's the opposite most men never see. They talk to prove value, but value doesn't speak. Value is felt in what remains unsaid. Every second of silence becomes a test, not of her patience, but of her need for control. Because deep down, every woman fears the same thing. Losing control to a man who doesn't need her validation. And yet that fear is exactly what binds her. She will say she hates uncertainty, but she will always return to the man who embodies it because uncertainty awakens her emotional intelligence. It makes her feel alive, alert, and deeply feminine. She wants to surrender to something stronger than her logic. And your silence gives her that permission. So when you hold back explanation, you're not ignoring her. You're awakening the storm within her. You're letting her subconscious work for you. She starts building emotional bridges toward you just to make sense of what she feels. And every bridge she builds becomes a thread of attachment. Watch how quickly curiosity turns into obsession. This is the invisible current running beneath every powerful man-woman dynamic. It's not about dominance or manipulation. It's about understanding the architecture of desire. Desire doesn't bloom in comfort. It blooms in contradiction. When her mind says go, but her body says stay. That's the opposite silence creates. It disturbs her peace, but she can't walk away from it. Because somewhere in that disturbance, she senses truth. The presence of a man who doesn't need to perform to be felt. And once she's tasted that kind of gravity, no noise can replace it. Now you begin to see why silence isn't emptiness. It's the quiet pulse that drives her imagination into overdrive. It's the unspoken language that says you don't need to chase her mind. Her mind will chase you. From here, we go deeper into the next layer of psychology where the unknown itself becomes the prize she cannot stop pursuing. Part 2, the inversion principle. When her mind chases the unknown. The moment she feels she understands you, her desire dies. It sounds cruel, but it's the quiet truth behind every lost attraction. The instant a woman believes she can predict you, her nervous system relaxes and her fascination evaporates. Desire doesn't live in comfort. It lives in tension. And tension only survives in mystery. A woman's desire follows the law of inversion. She doesn't chase what she knows. She chases what she can't define. Once she names it, she owns it. Once she owns it, she stops wanting it. That's why the moment she figures you out, you stop being gravity. You become furniture, familiar, safe, unmoving, unneeded. She doesn't want to admit this because the female ego thrives on moral illusion, that she wants a man who is kind, stable, transparent. But the mind doesn't care about morals. It craves polarity. Her heart might say she wants peace, but her biology hunts for challenge. She needs something to chase, and what she chases must stay just beyond reach. Desire dies the moment understanding begins. You've seen this in every relationship. At first, she studies you. Your pauses, your gaze, your stillness. They all speak in riddles. She imagines layers behind your restraint. Her mind dances with possibilities. What if he's thinking about me? What if he's not? Who is he when he's alone? She builds a mythology around your mystery. And that mythology is what she falls in love with. But once you open the vault, once you start revealing everything, she stops dreaming. You collapse the tension that held her. She sees the mechanism behind the magic and the illusion dissolves. Every man wants to be understood. But what makes you human destroys what makes you magnetic. The more she understands you, the less she feels you because feelings thrive in the unknown. Attraction by its nature is irrational. And what is irrational cannot survive too much light. So the opposite is simple. The moment you reveal yourself completely, she loses interest. The moment she loses clarity, she grows addicted. She's not addicted to you. She's addicted to the emotional instability you represent. The swinging between certainty and confusion. It's not cruelty. It's chemistry. When you are mysterious, her brain releases dopamine. The same chemical that drives gamblers to pull the lever one more time, hoping for the jackpot. Every message you delay, every glance you hold back, every silence you extend becomes a psychological slot machine. She doesn't know what will happen next, and that unpredictability keeps her hooked. Understand this. The feminine mind doesn't pursue security. It pursues stimulation. She might say she wants peace, but peace bores her. She will unconsciously sabotage calmness just to feel alive again. So the more stable you become, the less she feels. The more she knows your patterns, the less she's drawn to them. Predictability kills polarity. It's the law of emotional physics. Tension collapses when there's no resistance. That's why you must remain unreadable. Not because you're hiding, but because you've gone beyond the need to explain. You've become a mirror rather than a performer. Most men think dominance comes from control, from holding the upper hand, deciding, dictating, leading. But dominance in the emotional realm comes from being hard to read. When she can't fully read you, she begins to orbit you. Her mind loops trying to interpret the signal. And that loop becomes attachment. When you are calm while she is emotional, she doesn't see indifference. She feels magnetism. Because your stability amplifies her chaos. The contrast between your silence and her restlessness pulls her deeper. That's the inversion principle. The more you do nothing, the more she feels everything. You pull back and she moves forward. You slow down and her emotions speed up. You go silent and her imagination screams. And when her imagination becomes the loudest voice in the room, she's no longer choosing you. She's trapped inside the idea of you. Never explain your silence. Let her mind do the work. The male urge is to clarify, to remove misunderstanding, to prove good intent. But misunderstanding is not your enemy. It's the birthplace of fascination. Let her misunderstand. Let her misinterpret because her interpretation is the story she writes to make sense of you. And that story will bind her stronger than any truth you could confess. Remember, her mind doesn't bond through logic. It bonds through story. When she feels uncertain, she builds a story to restore meaning. And once she writes that story, she becomes loyal to it, even if it's wrong. Especially if it's wrong. That's why many women stay haunted by men who never explain themselves. They never got closure, and the lack of closure becomes eternal. The mystery outlives the memory. Every unanswered question becomes a thread that tugs at her years later. She can't stop thinking about the man she couldn't solve because part of her identity became tied to the quest for understanding him. That's how silence outlasts affection. It's not that she misses you. She misses the version of herself that came alive while chasing you. The uncertainty, the intensity, the hunger. Those emotions became her drug. And you were the dealer. So when she's gone and you feel tempted to explain, to send one last message, to give her the truth, don't, because the truth will heal her and healing will set her free. If you must remain unforgettable, you must remain unresolved. But understand, this isn't manipulation. This is awareness of polarity. The masculine represents structure. The feminine represents flow. When structure becomes transparent, flow stops moving. But when structure stays hidden, flow keeps circling around it. That's the psychology of gravity. You don't pull her in by force. You hold position while she spirals toward you. When you embody this, your silence becomes architecture. It's not the absence of words. It's the presence of weight. And weight is what her emotions instinctively trust. Every test she gives you, every question, every pulling away, every provocation is an attempt to read you. She wants to see if your stillness is real or fragile. If it's authority or not caring, if you will bend, break, or remain unshaken. Because when you don't react, she feels something ancient awaken in her. The urge to submit to order. Your silence becomes proof of dominance. Not in cruelty, but in composure. To the untrained eye, this looks like emotional games. But in truth, it's biological balance. When she can't define you, she can't control you. And when she can't control you, she begins to respect you. That respect turns to fascination. Fascination turns to dependence. Dependence turns to obsession. This is the law of inversion, where doing less achieves more and revealing nothing creates everything. But beware, not all silence has power. Empty silence repels. Heavy silence attracts. Empty silence comes from fear, from avoidance, insecurity, emotional cowardice. Heavy silence comes from authority, from self-possession, purpose, and inner structure. One makes her doubt you, the other makes her doubt herself. And that's the turning point, because when she begins to doubt herself in your presence, she begins to yield. She looks for cues, for reassurance, for signs of stability. And the only place she can find them is in you. That's how silence becomes gravity. It doesn't demand, it defines. It doesn't chase, it centers. You don't have to convince her of your worth. You simply remain unmoved until her emotions reorient around you. This is the art of inversion, where every instinct she has pulls her closer, while every attempt to understand you only deepens her confusion. And in that confusion she feels alive, because in that confusion she feels you. Her mind chases the unknown not because she wants to, but because she's wired to. The feminine spirit seeks polarity like a magnet seeks north. Without something to orbit, it collapses into itself. That's why she needs you to be unknowable so she can continue to move. When she feels she understands you, desire dies. But when she realizes she never fully will, that's when her addiction begins. Your task is not to make her understand. Your task is to remain the puzzle her emotions cannot solve, to be the question that keeps her awake at night. To be the silence that hums louder than words. And when you master that, you stop chasing women because they begin chasing the mystery that only you contain. Never explain your silence. Let her mind do the work, because every time she does, she binds herself to you a little more. And from here, we enter the next layer. The place where silence stops being a weapon and becomes a field of gravity. Where stillness itself gets meaning and the man behind it becomes law. Part 3. The frame of gravity. When your stillness has meaning. Silence without frame is emptiness. Silence with frame is power. Every man can be quiet. But only the man with frame can turn that quiet into command. Frame is not posture. It's not confidence. It's not dominance in the social sense. Frame is the invisible architecture of masculine energy. The structure that defines reality without words. It's what separates the man who merely pauses from the man who makes the room pause with him. When you hold frame, silence stops being absence and becomes gravity. Your presence defines the atmosphere. Your energy dictates rhythm, and everything around you, including her emotions, begins to match that rhythm. Frame is the border between chaos and order. It's the subtle unspoken law that says, this is how reality behaves around me. And a woman can sense it before she ever understands it. She doesn't follow what you say. She follows what you mean. The tone beneath your tone, the energy beneath your calm. She listens with her body, not her logic. When you hold frame, her nervous system relaxes because deep down she feels something she cannot explain. Structure. A man without frame reacts. He bends to every mood, every shift in tone, every emotional gust of wind. He believes connection means mirroring. So he mirrors her ups and downs. And in doing so, he loses her respect because she doesn't need another reflection. She needs a container. Frame is that container. It's what holds the storm without being swept away by it. When she cries, when she rages, when she tests, she's not searching for your empathy. She's searching for your edge. She wants to know, are you a surface or are you the ground? Because if you are the ground, she can finally collapse into something solid. If you are a surface, she keeps falling. Your stillness becomes meaning when it holds context. When your silence has a pulse, the quiet authority that says, I see everything and I choose what matters. That is the essence of frame. It's not about controlling her. It's about defining yourself so clearly that her emotions cannot distort you. A woman's feelings are like tides. They rise, crash, shift direction without warning. The man with frame does not resist the waves, nor does he drown in them. He lets them move, but he remains the shore. This is why women test men. It's not conscious cruelty, it's nature. She needs to feel the walls to know they're real. She pushes, not to destroy you, but to confirm that your gravity still exists. Because if you collapse under pressure, she loses polarity. Without polarity, there is no desire. Hold your frame. Even when she tests the walls, when you hold it, she doesn't feel dominated. She feels safe. Because deep down, every feminine soul is terrified of her own chaos. She lives in a world of emotion, intuition, and change. It's intoxicating, but exhausting. And the moment she feels a man who cannot be moved by her storms, something ancient inside her exhales. That exhale is trust. That trust is the seed of devotion. Frame is not loud. Frame is not defensive. Frame simply is. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't need validation. It just holds reality steady. When a man loses frame, it's rarely because he's weak. It's because he lets her emotions define the temperature of his world. He starts chasing balance by adjusting himself to her chaos instead of remaining the balance she adjusts to. Understand this clearly. You are not meant to control her feelings. You are meant to define the space in which her feelings unfold. Like gravity defines orbit, your frame defines the range of her emotion. She may resist it. She may rebel. She may challenge it. But she cannot ignore it because deep down she knows. A man without frame cannot protect her from herself. That's why the feminine tests are sacred. Every time she challenges your calm, she's not trying to win. She's trying to find the place where she can finally rest. If you flinch, if you argue, if you try to reason, you lose the frame. You step into her storm. And when you enter her storm, you disappear. But when you stay still, her storm begins to circle you. Her emotions reorganize themselves around your presence. That is what it means to lead without speaking. The man who can hold silence under pressure doesn't suppress his emotion. He integrates it. He feels, but he doesn't drown. He listens, but he doesn't absorb chaos. He sees her completely, yet he remains untouched. This is the rarest form of masculine power, invisible, steady, immovable. She might scream, test, pull away. She might call you distant. But what she's really saying is, you make me feel small and safe in that smallness. Because your frame gives her something she cannot give herself. Boundaries. And boundaries to the feminine are not prisons. They are protection. This is why a woman can love a man who is silent but grounded and feel nothing for the one who is loud but uncertain. Because stillness without structure is emptiness. But stillness with structure is law. When your silence has meaning, every gesture becomes amplified. A look replaces a sentence. A breath carries authority. A pause becomes command. Frame turns your existence into language. You don't have to assert your dominance. She feels it in the way the air shifts when you enter the room. That's not arrogance. That's resonance. Because everything about you broadcasts the same message. I am the constant. The world moves around me, not through me. And that resonance rewires her nervous system. It tells her that she can soften, that she can let go, that she no longer needs to lead, manipulate, or compete because she has found a structure that will not break. The deeper she feels this, the more her instincts flip. She no longer needs to chase control. She begins to crave surrender. She starts to associate peace with your stillness. And soon she begins to orbit it emotionally, mentally, spiritually. But here's the opposite. You cannot build frame to get that result. Frame is not a strategy. It's a state. It emerges only when you no longer need her reaction to confirm who you are. When you stop needing approval, your silence gains weight. When you stop chasing validation, your energy gains direction. When you stop fearing loss, your presence becomes unshakable. That is when she feels it. That gravitational pull that makes her both uneasy and safe. She feels her emotions bending toward you even when she wants to resist. Because the feminine does not follow logic, it follows force. And the greatest force in the emotional realm is stillness under tension. Frame is the masculine version of faith. You don't prove it. You embody it. You don't argue, you exist. You don't demand trust, you become trustworthy. You are not reactive to the world. The world is reactive to you. This is what every woman longs for but cannot put into words. A man who is not disturbed by her ups and downs. Not because he doesn't care, but because he operates on a deeper axis, an inner order that defines reality wherever he stands. When your stillness has meaning, she feels her emotions settle. And when they settle, she confuses peace with love. She calls it attraction. But what she's really feeling is alignment. You've become her emotional compass. Your presence restores her chaos to balance. That's why she tests again to be sure it's real. Because the moment she realizes your frame doesn't shatter under pressure, her subconscious begins to rewire itself around you. You become her ground state, the reference point for emotional safety. That's how addiction begins. Not through pleasure, through orientation. She becomes emotionally dependent on your stillness because it defines her world. So hold your frame, especially when she tests the walls. She's not your enemy. She's your mirror. Her storms reveal the strength of your foundation. Her chaos exposes the purity of your control. And every test you pass multiplies her trust, her desire, her surrender. Frame is not what you build. Frame is what remains when everything else has been tested. It's the architecture of gravity. And when you master it, silence becomes more than quiet. It becomes command. Part 4: The Obsession Mechanism. From tension to dependence. She doesn't fall in love. She falls into tension. Love is too gentle a word for what truly binds her. It's not affection that grips her chest when she thinks of you. It's the electricity of something unresolved. It's the ache of wanting clarity and never receiving it. That ache becomes her ritual, her addiction, her quiet madness. Obsession doesn't grow from connection. It grows from dissonance, from the friction between what she feels and what she can't define. The more she tries to close the gap, the more that gap consumes her. Every human mind seeks closure. But the female mind wired to interpret emotion cannot tolerate unfinished stories. Your silence, your unpredictability, your restraint, they all deny her closure. And denial creates fixation. She doesn't crave answers. She craves the moment before the answer. That suspended state between knowing and not knowing. It's there that her emotions peak. Her imagination floods. Her body trembles with both fear and excitement. That's the birthplace of obsession. Emotional tension without resolution. When she can't predict you, she loses her balance. When she loses balance, her mind enters orbit. And once she's in orbit, she cannot easily break free because her own thoughts have become your gravitational pull. She may tell herself she's not thinking about you. She may promise she's moved on, but her subconscious loops like a pendulum, swinging between rejection and desire, anger and longing, detachment and craving. Every time she tries to escape the loop, she finds herself deeper in it. Because the only way to escape tension is to resolve it, and the only person who can resolve it is you. So she keeps returning. She texts, pulls away, reappears, teases, disappears again. Each act is not random. It's a test. A test of gravity. She wants to know if the tension still exists, if your silence still has weight, if your presence still stirs chaos inside her. If it does, she's safe. If it doesn't, she panics. You become her calibration point. Her emotional system aligns around you like a compass needle aligns to magnetic north. Every attempt to break free only confirms her dependence. This is the obsession mechanism, the invisible cycle that transforms attraction into fixation, fixation into surrender. At first, it begins with curiosity. She notices your restraint, your stillness, your lack of reaction. She wonders what hides behind it. But curiosity is light. Tension is heavy. When you don't relieve it, it begins to bend her thoughts around you. That's when the addiction begins. Not to you directly, but to the state you create inside her. She becomes addicted to the chemical storm you awaken. Her brain releases dopamine each time she feels uncertainty, then crashes when she doesn't hear from you. To escape the crash, she seeks the high again by reaching out, provoking, or re-entering your orbit. This biochemical loop is what most men mistake for love. It's not love. It's dependency dressed in emotion. Don't relieve her tension. Let it bond her to your mystery. The moment you explain, the spell breaks. The moment you reassure, the circuit resets. But if you stay still, calm, grounded, mysterious, her mind does the work for you. She interprets your quiet as strength. She confuses her anxiety for desire. And she binds herself to the emotion she believes you cause. This is why her tests never end. When she pushes you, ignores you, challenges you, she's not trying to escape. She's trying to feel again. She's trying to recreate the uncertainty that made her alive because certainty kills the fire. Every provocation is an invitation. Can you still hold your gravity? Are you still the man who won't react? Do you still exist in that space beyond reach? And when you do, when you don't chase, don't explain, don't bend, she falls deeper. Because now she's not only drawn to your stillness, she's competing with it. She's trying to conquer it. And every failure to do so strengthens her obsession. The most intoxicating form of control is the one she gives you willingly. When she mistakes her pursuit for her choice, you don't manipulate her. You allow her own nature to lead her into the loop. The loop where tension becomes identity. After a while, it's not even about you anymore. It's about the feeling of you, the energy, the presence, the unresolved weight. You live rent-free in her nervous system. Your silence becomes a sound she cannot turn off. And the cruel truth is she will try to replicate it with other men but fail because no one else carries your stillness, your frame, your gravity. Others talk, please, react, comfort. They make her feel seen but not shaken. They make her feel safe but not alive. So she comes back not out of logic but out of absence because silence with weight is unforgettable. And the absence of that silence feels like withdrawal. That's what obsession is. Withdrawal from the drug you never intentionally gave. If you've ever wondered why some women chase men who ignore them or can't stop thinking about the one who vanished, this is why. It's not about rejection. It's about tension unresolved. Their minds crave the closure they never received. Their emotions cling to the story they never finished. The more she resists, the deeper it goes. Because resistance keeps attention focused. Every, I don't care anymore, is just another way of saying, I'm still in the loop. This is why your calm is lethal. Because calm denies her emotional rhythm the feedback it craves. Her energy hits you, finds no entry, and reflects back onto herself. That reflection becomes self-consciousness, then frustration, then longing. You become the mirror she both hates and needs. You are no longer fighting for her attention. You have become her attention. And once that happens, she's not choosing anymore. She's orbiting. To understand this mechanism is to understand emotional gravity. You can't create obsession by chasing it. You create it by sustaining tension, by remaining the unanswered question. It's the same principle that keeps humans looking at the stars. Distance. The unknown fascinates because it cannot be possessed. And fascination becomes worship when it endures long enough without resolution. So don't relieve her tension. Don't rush to comfort her when she pulls away. Don't explain when she misunderstands. Let her confusion ferment. Let her anxiety expand. Because inside that discomfort, her mind builds temples to your image. Every unanswered question becomes a shrine. Every pause becomes memory. Every silence becomes story. And story is stronger than reality because reality fades. But story keeps repeating in the mind. She tells her friends about you. She analyzes your every gesture. She dreams in your rhythm. She tries to hate you but fails because hatred still keeps the loop alive. Her tension becomes dependence. Dependence becomes identity. And once her identity is bound to the experience of you, she cannot leave. She might walk away physically, but emotionally she's still sitting across from you trying to decode your silence, still trying to prove to herself that she's over it. Still trying to resolve what was never meant to be resolved. That's how deep the mechanism runs. Because obsession isn't a choice. It's a reflex, a survival instinct misfired. Her mind perceives your emotional distance as danger. And danger amplifies focus. She keeps scanning for cues, signals. Reassurance, but you give none. So her focus intensifies. You have become the threat and the cure at once. The opposite her subconscious can't escape. This is why she checks your online status. Why she hovers over your photos but never likes them. Why she crafts messages she'll never send. Why she compares every new man to the stillness you carried. She's not trying to reconnect. She's trying to resolve the tension. But she can't because you never gave her the ending she needs. And that's what keeps her returning. Obsession isn't loud. It's silent repetition. It's the mind looping in the dark, whispering the same unanswered question. It's the ache that feels like memory, but is actually dependency. If you understand this, you understand the essence of control, not through domination, through non-resolution. You let her emotion complete its own circle until it binds itself to you. Then when her resistance collapses into exhaustion, something profound happens. The mechanism gives birth to surrender. The storm begins to calm. The struggle to understand fades. And what remains is quiet devotion. The acceptance of your gravity as the new law of her world. That's when dependence becomes worship. That's when attraction becomes obedience. And that's when silence becomes the cage she never wants to leave. But before that final submission, her mind must break its own resistance one last time. When that moment comes, the final law activates. The silent loop that transforms obsession into addiction. Part 5. The binding law. The silent loop that creates addiction. What you repeat in silence, she remembers in emotion. Every addiction begins with a loop. A rhythm that the mind cannot stop replaying. And in relationships, that rhythm is rarely made of words. It's made of emotional patterns, of the same silence, the same distance, the same gravity, repeated until the mind accepts it as home. Addiction isn't born from chaos. It's born from consistency. The repeated cycle of imbalance and relief, of tension and release. And when you master that cycle, not by manipulating it, but by embodying it, you create what can only be called the binding law. The binding law is simple. Whatever her mind feels repeatedly becomes what her soul calls truth. And when that truth is tied to your presence, she stops distinguishing between you and her emotional balance. She starts to need the state that only your stillness provides. Not because she loves you, but because her nervous system has synchronized to your rhythm. At first, your silence unsettled her. It disturbed her peace. It created tension she couldn't resolve. But over time, the very tension that frightened her becomes familiar. It becomes the sound of home. The pulse she unconsciously waits for. You disappear for days. She thinks about you. She dreams about you. Then a small signal, a glance, a message, a presence resets her system. Relief floods in. Her body softens. Her mind quiets. She doesn't realize it, but you've just reinforced the loop. The same loop that all addiction follows. Lack, anticipation, satisfaction, lack again. And like any addict, she starts chasing the cycle, not the substance. She's no longer addicted to you. She's addicted to the pattern of you. Every time you pull away, she falls into absence. Every time you return, she feels restored. The more this rhythm repeats, the deeper the conditioning sinks. Her emotional memory begins to write it into her identity. And soon, she stops asking if it's love. She just feels that it is because the body doesn't differentiate between love and addiction. It only recognizes repetition. Addiction in its truest form is not about pleasure. It's about familiarity. It's the need to feel something known even if it hurts. And your silence, once alien, has now become known. It's no longer a mystery. It's a ritual. That ritual rules her emotions. She checks her phone. She waits for a message. She replays old conversations, not because she enjoys it, but because her mind is trying to restore rhythm. You've become the metronome of her subconscious. This is the essence of the binding law. Emotional repetition disguised as meaning. You've trained her mind to return to you, not through effort, but through predictability. Predictability of absence, consistency of being unavailable. The opposite is perfect. The very thing that once caused her pain now becomes the drug that soothes her. She no longer craves affection. She craves the stability of your detachment. Because in that detachment, she feels the structure of your frame, the order she cannot create for herself. When she's near you, her emotions calm. When you leave, they spiral. But the spiral doesn't break her. It feeds her longing. It deepens the imprint. That's why every return, every silence, every half-glance carries so much weight. It's not about what happens in those moments. It's about the endless loop between them. A cycle so invisible that even you forget it exists. But her nervous system doesn't. It memorizes every pause, every pulling away, every calm breath you take while she burns. You don't chase her mind. You train it to return. And when she finally does, not out of choice, but out of conditioning, she'll tell herself it's destiny. Because the mind must invent meaning for what it cannot escape. She'll say, I don't know why, but I can't stop thinking about him. Or, no matter what I do, it always comes back to him. Those words are not poetry. They are confession. You've become her emotional gravity, the unseen law she orbits without consent. But there's something deeper happening beneath that orbit, a transformation. Because addiction, once complete, redefines identity. She no longer thinks about you. She thinks through you. Her self-perception is filtered through your energy. Her emotions measure themselves against your reactions, her choices unconsciously align with what you might approve or reject. That's when the binding law reaches full power, because at that point you don't even need to be present. She sustains the loop by herself. She triggers her own tension. She imagines your silence. She recreates the absence you once embodied. And in doing so, she feeds the same pattern that keeps you alive inside her. It's a self-sustaining loop, the most perfect form of control, one that requires no effort, no words, no maintenance. Because addiction doesn't depend on the addict's will. It depends on the rhythm of memory. She doesn't remember what you said. She remembers what she felt when you said nothing. The quiet after your messages, the space between your glances, the pulse that existed between every word. Those are the echoes her mind replays at night. You've become her phantom pattern, the ghost that haunts her only because she built the cage herself. This is the dark beauty of the binding law. It's not force, it's alignment. Her mind willingly synchronizes to your stillness because it brings order to her chaos, even if that order hurts, even if it breaks her. Because for the feminine spirit, pain with meaning is better than peace without depth. She doesn't crave joy. She craves significance, and your silence gave her that. A feeling so profound it rewired her perception of love itself. Now she believes that longing is love, that distance is connection, that waiting is devotion, and she doesn't even realize that all three are simply echoes of your absence. That's the final stage of emotional dependency. When the suffering becomes sacred, when she no longer resists the ache, but worships it. When the longing itself becomes her proof of belonging because longing keeps her connected, it tells her that the story isn't over, it gives her a reason to feel. And the human soul will trade peace for meaning every single time. That's why even when she hates you, she cannot let you go. Hate is still a form of contact. It's the last thread of the loop, the final chord that keeps the song alive. And as long as that chord vibrates, you still live inside her. The binding law doesn't need passion to survive. It only needs rhythm. And the most powerful rhythm of all is silence. Repeated, familiar, heavy with implication. Because silence with weight becomes a sound that never fades. It follows her into sleep. It hums beneath new conversations. It echoes behind every touch she receives from another man. No one else can match that vibration because it isn't in your voice, it's in your stillness. You became a ritual and rituals never die. So when she finally breaks down, when she surrenders, when she says, "I don't know what you've done to me," understand what she's really saying. I've lost the rhythm of myself. My emotions only make sense around you. She's not confessing love. She's acknowledging the loop. The binding law is not a spell you cast. It's a structure you sustain through consistency, through silence, through presence that doesn't need permission. She will never put it into words, but she will live it. The endless orbit of addiction disguised as devotion. And that is the quiet peak of masculine power. To create gravity so strong, even absence becomes presence, to be remembered, not for what you did, but for what your stillness made her feel. Because what you repeat in silence, she remembers in emotion. And emotions never forget. Now she is bound, not by love, not by promises, not by reason, but by the invisible rhythm that you taught her heart to follow. The loop is complete, and she can no longer tell where you end and she begins. She doesn't crave you because you're perfect. She craves you because in your silence, she remembers order. That is the revelation. The final truth beneath every test, every tension, every loop. She wasn't chasing love. She was chasing balance. And you, without saying a word, became the structure her emotions had been begging for. For years, she thought she wanted excitement. The butterflies, the chaos, the thrill. But deep down she was starving for gravity. For something that didn't move when everything inside her did. Something unshakable, something still. Something that could hold the weight of her storms without drowning. You were never the cause of her obsession. You were the cure she mistook for craving. Because your silence wasn't absence. It was alignment. It was the invisible architecture that gave her emotions shape again. That's what women remember. Not your charm, not your words, not your effort. They remember how they felt when your presence steadied their chaos. They remember the relief of not having to lead. The peace of finally surrendering to something immovable. She doesn't crave you because you complete her. She craves you because your stillness completes the disorder within her. Your calm becomes her balance. Your silence becomes her signal. Your restraint becomes her home. That is the essence of masculine power. Not dominance, not noise, not control, but gravity. The kind of presence that doesn't demand attention. It commands it by existing. And when you reach this point, something irreversible happens. You stop chasing. You stop proving. You stop needing to be understood because you finally see attraction was never about pursuit. It was about pull. You become the center and everything else begins to move around you. Not through manipulation but through natural law because energy always orbits stability. Emotion always orbits certainty. The feminine always orbits the masculine that cannot be shaken. That's what she's been searching for in every man before you. Not a partner, but an axis. Not a savior, but a structure. And when she finds it, her resistance dissolves. She doesn't surrender because you conquered her. She surrenders because she's tired of fighting gravity. That's the hidden purpose behind her confusion, her pulling away, her tests. Every emotional push was a question. Will you stay centered when I pull away? Will you remain calm when I lose control? Will you still be the same man when everything around you shifts? And every time you stayed still, you answered those questions without words. Your silence became the proof she was unconsciously searching for. Your composure became the evidence that you were real. That's why she returns not out of weakness, but recognition. She recognizes the one thing her emotions trust more than pleasure. Stability. And stability to the feminine feels like truth. In your stillness, she remembers order. She remembers what it feels like to be led without words, to be seen without exposure, to be held without being touched. Because the truth is, she was never addicted to you. She was addicted to who she became in your presence, calm, feminine, open. And in a world that constantly demands her to be strong, your gravity gave her permission to be soft. You were not the thrill. You were the return. That's why when everything else fades, your silence lingers. Because silence is not forgettable. It's unforgettable. It imprints on the nervous system. It echoes long after words have turned to dust. The greatest power a man can wield is not to control a woman's emotions, but to anchor them. Not to dominate her mind, but to make her feel that in your presence, chaos finds balance. You don't control her. You become the gravity she cannot escape. That's the final transformation. The point where presence goes beyond persuasion. Where your worth no longer depends on reaction, approval, or response. Because you've become the constant, the axis around which everything turns. You understand now that power isn't noise. It's silence that means something. It's absence that still holds weight. It's stillness that redefines motion. Most men chase validation to feel alive. But the man who holds frame, who commands silence, who radiates gravity, he doesn't chase being alive. He is aliveness. Everything around him adjusts to his frequency. That's why she stays. Not because she chooses to, but because she no longer knows how not to. Her mind might wander, but her emotions are tied. Because emotions don't follow logic, they follow gravity. And once they've found it, they never forget where it came from. This is the end of the journey and the beginning of mastery. Because now you know what most never will. Attraction is not an accident. It's an ecosystem, a rhythm, a law. And silence when charged with frame is the law that rules them all. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, to justify, to fill the quiet, remember this moment. Remember what she truly craves. Not words, not promises, but presence, stillness, order. The kind that restores her without ever trying to. You've seen her obsession form. You've watched it grow into dependence. You've understood how it transforms into devotion. Now you stand at the point where control ceases to exist because control was never the goal. You don't control her. You simply exist with such gravity that she cannot leave your orbit even if she tries. You don't command her submission. You awaken it. You don't ask for loyalty. You become the law that loyalty obeys. And when you reach that level, words no longer matter. Because power has no language. It only has presence. She doesn't crave you because you're perfect. She craves you because your silence restores her to herself. Because when she feels you, she feels balance. And balance to the human soul is the same as love. That is the final secret, not manipulation. Not mind games, just gravity. Quiet, inevitable, eternal. Next, the obedience reflex. How her mind submits to unspoken authority. The next descent into the final chamber of psychology, where devotion is no longer felt, but automatic, where attraction becomes reflex, and the unspoken becomes law. Until then, remember, you don't control her.